You know when you go to the store and you see Rice-A-Roni or Uncle Ben's or Minute Rice and you're like, oh man, that sounds amazing to have a quick meal whenever you need it? Yeah, I thought the same, but then I looked at the ingredient list and that is not what I want to be feeding my family. So I thought maybe I should just try making my own, and boy did it deliver. Just like my baking mixes, these rice mixes are super easy, super convenient, and very delicious to make. The other nice thing about these rice mixes is that they are a fraction of the cost. So if you're looking to save money but also stock your pantry, this is one super easy way that you can do that. Most of these recipes call for some bouillon, but I don't know if you've looked at bouillon powders lately. They have very similar ingredients to the rice mixes, and if we're trying to avoid those ingredients and those preservatives, having the bouillon does not make sense. So we're actually going to start by making our own chicken bouillon. So really you get 6 recipes today. So we'll get started on our chicken bouillon. I am going to be using a 1/2 pint jar here. I believe it's 500 mils. And then my canning funnel. We're going to start with 1 cup of nutritional yeast. And it has quite a bit of health properties in it. It's got a lot of B12. Okay, that goes in. Then it's 1 tablespoon of salt, 3 tablespoons of garlic powder. This is the garlic powder that I made in a video a few videos back. And I said in that video that I'm not sure if I would ever do it again, but honestly, it has been so delicious. It really elevates all of the recipes that I make. And then 3 tablespoons of onion powder, 3 tablespoons of dried oregano. I grew a lot of herbs in my garden this year. However, it was a lot less than I anticipated. So next year, I now know I need to grow a little bit more so I can dry enough for the entire year. But you live and you learn. 3 tablespoons of basil. One tablespoon of black pepper. And then 2 tablespoons of dried parsley, which I did grow enough of in my garden. Of course, it goes without saying to make sure that you're washing your hands before making anything like this. But you never know. So that is the recipe. Just give it a good shake. The other thing you can do is grind this in a spice grinder. You could also grind it in your blender, especially if you have a Vitamix. The Vitamix blender is so amazing. I would never go back to a regular blender. I'm actually gonna go give this a little bit of a blitz. I see a couple of big chunks in there and I do not want that for my recipes. I just blitzed it for about 15 seconds and it is perfectly combined. It is crazy how much of a difference that makes. This is only half full now, and before it was completely full. Now that we have our chicken bouillon ready, we are going to get into our first recipe. For all of these recipes, I'm going to be using a base of 2 cups of rice, and I'm going to be using a quart mason jar, or a liter if you're in Canada. I find this is the perfect amount to feed my family, but you can do less or more depending on where you are at in your life. I do bulk storage of rice as well, so we've always got some on hand. And I was just thinking about this. I'm gonna fill up all 5 of my jars right now with rice so we can just get the rice out of the way. We are gonna use our canning funnel. 1, 2 cups, 2 cups, 2. A quick caveat before we get started is all of these recipes do have salt in them. I find salt makes everything taste better. If you are salt-free or low sodium, feel free to leave it out and then salt to taste as you go. I do find that it's nice to have it perfectly seasoned and salted and ready to go. I find that's one of the benefits of buying a pre-made rice, but again, you can totally leave it out. Now this first recipe is going to be a chicken rice. So we're gonna start with our jar. Now there are 3 different options for storing your mixes and your seasonings. Number 1, you could do it just like this and pour your seasonings directly on top. However, I like to rinse my rice before I cook it, so that did not work for me. What I'm going to do is actually put it in one of these teeny little jars, and these jars fit perfectly inside of the rice. So I know exactly what goes into it, and I can just pour this whole seasoning mix in with my rice. The other thing that you could do is store this separate from your rice. Fill it up with your seasoning mix and just store it in front of your rice. The other nice thing about that is you can use these seasoning mixes for more than just a rice. To get started with our chicken rice, we are going to utilize our chicken bouillon powder. So we're going to start with 2 tablespoons of this. If you have no problem with the ingredients in a bouillon, or if you can find a really clean one, you could swap this out for a cube of bouillon seasoning and just place it in like so. And that would make for a super easy mix as well. Next is 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 1 teaspoon of dried parsley, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and half a teaspoon of black pepper. Since the chicken bouillon already has some salt in it, we are going to be adding half a teaspoon of salt to this. Remember, this is enough for 2 cups of rice. If you only want to make 1 cup, you have to half this seasoning mix. The other thing is you could store multiple different rice portions in a couple of these jars, or if you want to do even more, and then just use half the seasoning mix each time you make the rice. For now, we're going to pop this straight into our rice mix. And there you go. This second rice mix is an all-purpose rice. This tastes great with almost everything you put it with. I like to do a pork chop and put it on top, or a grilled chicken breast, and it just tastes amazing. The other thing is I like to have this seasoning mix all ready to go, and that way I can season my ground meat when I put it into a spaghetti or a sloppy joe. It literally is so versatile. It's just onion, garlic, salt, pepper, and a couple other spices. We're going to start with 2 teaspoons of salt, which sounds like a lot, but we're doing 2 cups of rice. Again, play around with the salt ratios. 1/2 to 1 full teaspoon of pepper. I'm just going to be doing a half teaspoon today. 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of paprika. You could do smoked paprika or regular, and 1 teaspoon of oregano. Again, add the lid, give it a little mix, and there you have a delicious all-purpose seasoning mix. I just gave my workspace a little clean because it was getting a little bit chaotic. We are using pretty similar spices for all of our recipes, so I just thought I would leave them out. But this third recipe is a Greek style. We put this underneath our grilled chicken, or we will do it underneath some gyros, or when I make a Greek inspired bowl. We're gonna do 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 tablespoon chicken bouillon, 2 teaspoons of dried parsley, 2 teaspoons of dried dill. You could do a combination of mint or basil or parsley and dill. Mint is definitely a tasty one too. 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt. Typically I go 1 teaspoon of salt for every cup of rice. Because the chicken bouillon has some salt in it already, I'm only gonna do 1 teaspoon of salt and season it as I go when I'm actually cooking these up. Then we'll do half a teaspoon of pepper. The other thing that would be delicious in this would be some dried lemon zest. I didn't have any dried lemon zest today, but what you could do is just dry out some lemon zest on a baking tray and just add a little bit of that. This mix is ready to go. Give it a shake. And recipe 3 is complete. Recipe number 4 is going to be a barbecue style rice. It's kind of an odd one, but it goes super well with barbecue, barbecued pulled pork, barbecue pulled chicken. It would go great with corn on the cob, or even next to the cornbread that I had in my last baking mix video. If you missed that, go ahead and check that out. I will link it above. This one is a little bit strange because it does use some brown sugar. So we have a 1/4 cup of brown sugar to begin, 2 tablespoons of paprika, then 1/2 of a tablespoon of chili powder, 1/2 tablespoon of onion powder, 1/2 tablespoon of garlic powder, 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and 1 teaspoon of salt. This one's going to be a little bit trickier to mix up in this container. It filled it almost to the top. So either mix it beforehand or just give it a mix when you're actually cooking the rice. Oh, you know what? It's actually mixing pretty well. But this is a delicious barbecue rub that you could put on meat, or you could put it in pulled pork. And that is our 4th recipe. Our final recipe is going to be a curry rice. Now, I am using jars because I try and limit my waste as much as possible, but you could definitely use some little Ziploc baggies and put them in here as well. It would make it a little easier to take out. Personal preference, really. We're gonna start with 1 teaspoon of turmeric, 2 teaspoons of curry powder, the other recipe I was debating between is this and a coconut rice. I am coming out with an ebook that will have multiple different rice recipes, and in that I'm definitely going to include the coconut rice. If you want to stay up to date with that, definitely get on my email subscriber list. I will be sending out updates as I go along. I also have some tags for these baking mixes that outline the entire recipe and outlines how to cook up your rice, so that way you do not have to worry about forgetting what's in it or forgetting how to cook it up. It's just super easy peasy. So if you want a copy of that, click the link in the description box below. We will do 2 tablespoons of chicken bouillon. Oh man, I am making a mess. 1 teaspoon of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 to 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm just going to be doing 1, half a teaspoon of pepper, and finally half a teaspoon of ginger powder. Pop your lid on, give it a mix. Into your rice it goes. Typically I do a 1 and 1.5 ratio of water to rice. So I do 2 cups of rice and I'll do 3 cups of water for this. I do a jasmine rice. The jasmine rice I get from Costco in the big bags, and it cooks up beautifully every time. Well, there you have it. 5 super easy and delicious homemade DIY rice mixes that you can stock your pantry with for a very quick and easy weeknight meal. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and please consider subscribing. It really helps support my channel. I appreciate you more than you know. Take care.